Just 2 days, floats will roll through downtown Salt Lake for Utah's annual Pioneer Day Parade. We're in the middle of parade season and in the middle of looking back at Craig Worth's 50th year in TV. Now, we figured Craig must have a parade story or two in his vault of half a century of stories. And we were right.
Well, believe me, after working 50 July months in TV, with many of them here in Utah, well, you know I've done lots of parade stories. I like the real old ones. Now, here a whole box worth of film that I collected all tonight. This is one of the earliest parades showing on Channel 4. It is from Huntsville with LDS President David O. McKay. You see, from the beginning, it's all about flags, horses, and parades. From Eureka to Box Elder to Vernal and every place else. And it all started with horses pulling covered wagons. And of course, showing off your Sunday best and your finest hats. A man remembered a 1912 Salt Lake City parade.
Horse-drawn floats, they could use a wagon, you see, and just have horses draw it. But then they got refined and spent a little more money and decorating. We used to put napkins through chicken wire for the outside for the decoration of the floats.
But horses would give way to the horseless carriage. A bountiful LDS ward put a few streamers on the shined-up family Chevy and circled the block. We have only a memory from a home movie. Parades are for kids to march down the street, and parades are for parents to stand on the curb and watch. There were scouts and kids of all kinds, just as we see in this 1920s parade of the LDS Mutual Improvement Association. And I say it's not a parade if there isn't any music. And we always played our best in our snappy band uniforms.
We marched in the earliest of these parades. We all wore the same type of uniform. It was just a sailor type of thing, white pants and white shirt with a sailor hat with a band around the top, and the band identified which school we were, purples, reds, blues, and so forth.
Then came the next big change. You didn't just pull a float with your car, you made your car into a float. Oh sure, we still had the Deseret News float and the Union Pacific, but now airlines were part of our progress by the 1930s. They became themes: the National Forest Service, ZCMI, and Ride the Train. And Salt Lake's new skyscraper, the hit of 1912.
We had a large front yard to build them right outdoors. I remember once the Walker Bank had a float, and we had a miniature of the Walker Bank on a float. It was the first skyscraper in town, you know, 16 floors, and we built a miniature of that.
I realize now just how lucky I was to talk to people such as Preston Parkinson, who were actually part of everyday life in Utah well over 100 years ago. Now, I remember interviewing him in 2000 when he was 97 years old. And I'll never forget, he told me he was a bit upset that day. He had just been turned down for a 15-year car loan.